My name is Doral Chenoweth, the old one. I'm not a chef. I do not play one on television. I write about chefs. I have for maybe 3 or 4 decades in Columbus, Ohio. I worked for a great newspaper, the Columbus Dispatch in Ohio, that permitted me to have free reign on the restaurants I selected to review. I was never dictated to about what to write, only when to write. I met deadlines for a number of years from the 1960s on. I worked for a tabloid in the days when the word tabloid had several different meanings, mostly scandal. I worked for the Columbus Star, owned by the Dispatch Printing Company. It preceded what we know today as the supermarket tabloids, the Enquirer and the News of the World. The Columbus Star more or less pioneered restaurant reviewing as we know it today. The reviewers today supposedly go anonymously, they pay their own check, and they write with a free will, today protected by Sullivan versus New York Times. That's the umbrella to protect the reporters on what they say is a matter of opinion, their opinion. I am interested in food because, well, I'll put it this way. My mother was not the best cook in the world, but she was a good newspaper woman. She was a country correspondent. She delivered the newspapers, and she chased stories. I want to talk to you about where food is in your life, starting with something that you never think about, the comics. I picked up the morning Sunday comics, and there's about 6 pages in here, and I counted 17 references to food. So if you think about the comics today, the food was pioneered in the comics in one called, anybody remember what it was? It was called Blondie. Dagwood invented the Dagwood sandwich, which you see today on some old restaurants. But on the front page, 1, 2, 3 stories involving food or references to restaurants or references to drink. That's how important food is in our society. As a restaurant reviewer, I came to Columbus in the days when the pioneer restaurant reviewer, as we know him, was named Duncan Hines. Today, he's a cake mix, but he also pioneered restaurant reviewing as we know it today. I brought with me a number of books that I like to discuss, my favorites, and what cookbooks are all about. I, as a food writer, probably received 500, maybe 600 cookbooks. Cookbooks of varying degrees. Some of them were novels relating to food, but most of them were recipes. And it's only been within the last 20 or 30 years that cookbooks have taken on storylines. We have novels set in restaurants. When a novelist wants to bring a bunch of people together in a storyline, he or she takes them in print to ink on paper. I brought with me cookbooks that I like because they've influenced me to some extent. Everybody writes cookbooks, it seems. My favorite story is that when Al Capone, the Chicago gangster, was incarcerated for income tax violation, they put him in a federal prison in Atlanta. He was of the opinion that when he went there, he could possibly take 2 things, a Bible and 1 more book. What he took was a cookbook of Italian recipes from his favorite restaurants in Chicago. That's an urban legend, but I like it, and it tells the importance of a recipe book. Some people used to say that he wrote it to fit his taste and the flavoring of his spaghetti and meatballs. I don't have a copy of it, but I came prepared with a variation of cookbooks. I hold in my hand one of my favorite cookbooks. I wouldn't use it, but it's published by the Department of Agriculture after World War II, and it has a rubber stamp on it that says, "From George Bender, United States Senator, Ohio." He could mail out 500,000 of these things and supposedly get their vote. This was used as a campaign gimmick by many West senators and members of the House of Representatives. I like it. I look at it and I think about how much the taxpayers paid for that. Here's another old cookbook that I like. It's called, you'll remember this one, The Farmer's Almanac Cookbook. This is a modern day version. This is more than 100 years old. In 2 centuries ago, when this thing started, this was the only cookbook that was circulated in the United States, and it was a valuable thing. You'll notice the cover, it's a dust jacket. It's multicolored, but they used to set the type on. This is so old that they set the type by hand. This is one that I have to keep in my study. My study has 96 cookbooks. One of them starts out with the Associated Press style book on how to write. The second one is something called a dictionary. The dictionary had the word food in there, so it works in my how to write about food. And the other 94 vary from recipe books to novels to narratives to promotion books. And in the 96, it ranges from how to how to cook, how to read, how to write, how to edit, everything a food writer needs. But I hold in my hand one of the people, a marginal cookbook. It's by the Frugal Gourmet. It is not in my list, but in my lectures I hold it up on what not to do. Everybody remembers the Frugal Gourmet from his television shows. He died on the vine, one might say, when he was found having affairs with young men, not necessarily of the right age. His name was Smith. I bring this along to tell you on what not to do. One of my favorite cookbooks, it may be my favorite, is a little 68-page book called Old Timey Recipes. I'm a hillbilly. So this woman named something out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, actually set the type by hand. This is a hand-printed 68-page cookbook, all her favorite recipes. She lived in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and it has the usual things from the South. It has cold slaw, the dressing, wilted lettuce, mountaineer salad, Martha Washington candy, Grandma's molasses candy. But in the back of the book, I damn near fell out of the chair when I read this. I haven't made them yet, but it's good reading and it's good talk. She has a recipe in here for parsnip wine. Parsnip wine. She has another recipe that was very well received, possibly in the Depression era. It's for home brew. But if you live in West Virginia or North Carolina or Tennessee, everyone wants a recipe for moonshine. It tells how to cook the corn in the still, what to use, the piping, the drums, the type water to use, and you just let it ferment. I will not admit to making moonshine, but cookbooks. Old cookbooks served as a safety deposit box for many families, many owners. They put things in the cookbooks. They put love letters, they put stamps, and some say it's a legend, but this is a $2 bill, 2 of them. Actually, these 2 are very valuable $2 bills. This is 1928. This was that? Yes, that was before Prohibition. That was during Prohibition. And so a lot of $2 bills ended up in cookbooks in West Virginia for an obvious reason. There was a time in West Virginia when a pint of whiskey, moonshine, cost $2. And so I've always had $2 in case I wanted moonshine. This was a $2 bill out of some place called Canada. Showed up in a cookbook, and I saved these things. I did not save love letters or anything like that. But that's my collection of cookbooks in my house. But these books are not on the 96 approved list for teaching. They're part of the excess of my 96 selections that are used to tell you how to write and how to appreciate old cookbooks. My 96, they don't necessarily have to be old. We have some as late as 2012, 2013, but they all are instructive when it comes to writing and appreciating food and loving cookbooks, old cookbooks.